Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 2. So, as Mark Biltz had stated in the last video, the last time there was a total solar eclipse that was just like the one we're about to have was exactly 100 years ago on August 21st in 1914. And this was just before the beginning of World War I. And as you may already know, it was in 1917 that the Balfour Declaration was written, which is the document that initiated the formation of the State of Israel. And 1917 was a Jubilee year, and this was 3 years prior. And I had mentioned in other videos that the Balfour Declaration was actually drafted in August, even though it wasn't recognized until sometime in November is when it took effect, but it was drafted in August, and this was in 1917, which was a Jubilee year. And the eclipse happened in 1914, 3 years prior to that, and that would actually fit the blood moon pattern, which are the blood moons that Mark Biltz discovered, by the way. And he was the one that discovered these blood moons. And now he's talking about the eclipse, which would be this eclipse right here. But these took place 4 or 3 years ago in 2014 and 2015. And now we're at 2017. We're at this solar eclipse right here. And again, this is a Jubilee year. So this fits the pattern. And the pattern is this: it usually starts in verse 10 and it goes through verse 17. And I can show you other examples. But in verse 14, there is some type of division, and this represents the cross and what Jesus did on the cross. That's depicted in verse 14, and it usually culminates with verse 17. And I can show you other scriptures that fit that pattern. But what I want to concentrate on in this video is this particular set of scriptures right here, because this is the Shiloh Prophecy, and I believe that's what this eclipse is all about, because as I've mentioned before, it specifically mentions an eclipse in verse 10 in Genesis 10 in this prophecy, which reads, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." And the way this reads in the Greek, it says, this word means not over here, will not eclipse. And this is the Greek word which means, it's the word arch, as an arch rival or archangel. It means the top ruler. Okay, and over here you have the star Regulus, which means the king planet. So this would be the king planet. Of course, this is the king constellation. So it's Leo, the lion of the tribe of Judah, which represents Jesus. And this is the king planet over here. And then the eclipse is going to take place precisely at this star Regulus, which is located at the thigh of Leo. And I'll show you the eclipse in a minute, but I'll go back to the prophecy for now, because I want you to see where it mentions the word thigh. But it's saying over here, will not eclipse. We'll just say the king planet, or the king or top ruler out of Judah. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and he's the top ruler. He's the King of kings and Lord of lords. That's the name that's written on his thigh, and that's the the word thigh right here. So it's saying, will not eclipse the top ruler or the King of Kings and Lord of Lords from out of Judah, and the lawgiver, and this word for lawgiver is the same word that's used in Daniel 9, where it's talking about Messiah the Prince. This is the word that's translated as prince. It means governor or ruler. From the thigh of him until, and this word right here means if. Okay, I just looked it up just to be sure, because that wasn't really making a lot of sense to put if in there, but over here it says an untranslatable word that makes a statement contingent. So it doesn't really have much meaning, this word right here. So until come the, and over here I'll show you this word. Okay, I just copy and pasted it, and you can see the translation over here in the Bible Hub website, and it says, I have been put away, am stored, am reserved for. So it's saying until come the having been put away or stored or reserved of him and him, and this word means the expectation of the nations, and that would actually be this right here. This is the constellation Coma, which I believe represents the capstone of the pyramid. You can see it's just an angle, and that's what the chief cornerstone is. That's what the word in the Greek means. The word corner means angle. So Jesus is the head of the corner, or the head angle. And it's this constellation over here, the constellation Coma, which is a Decan constellation for the constellation Virgo, and it means the desired or longed for, as it speaks of in Haggai 2:7, where it speaks of the Messiah saying that the desire of all nations will come. So this is what the constellation Coma represents, and that would be this constellation right here. Okay, so it's specifically mentioning an eclipse right here, and it's saying that the top ruler, or we could say the king's star, Regulus, will not be eclipsed until Shiloh comes. Okay, and it's about to be eclipsed, and I'll show you exactly when that's going to take place. We'll just move the time up a couple of days to the 21st, and you can see the eclipse right there. It's almost exactly in the center. If I move it down a few hours, we'll probably be a little more centered. And so you can see the eclipse, or the moon eclipsing the sun, and they're both eclipsing Regulus because they're taking place right where Regulus is located. Okay, so now I want to show you some tables that I did on the word eclipse, and what happened is when I tried to put in the full word eclipse, it didn't work. And so I was trying to find another way to put it in, so I looked up the definition, and then I noticed that in the Middle English, as you can see here, it was actually spelled without the E at the end. So I thought I would try it without the E at the end, and sure enough it came up. There was just one match, and when you put in just this one word, it only brings up this one verse right here in Mark 6, which reads, and wheresoever he entered into villages or into cities or into the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and besought him that they might touch, if it were but the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. Okay, so in order to understand why I put in the next two terms that I put in, you would have to watch these videos over here that I did some time ago, about 4 months ago, called Colors, Dyes, Microscopic Things, and Why God's Favorite Color is Royal Blue. So you would have to watch that video to understand the reasoning behind the next two words that I put in. But the next two words that I put in were, the next two terms were blue rope, and of course this all has to do with DNA. If you watch those videos, you'll understand why. But as you can see, it came up sure enough. You see the word rope, and it's almost like it's entwined with the word blue. They're coming right up against each other as if they're forming a string or a rope or a strand, which is what the blue rope is. It's actually part of the tallit. That's what they were trying to touch that Jesus was wearing. It's actually the tzitzit. And if you watch that video, you'll understand why they got so excited in heaven when Natan wore a tzitzit that day. But sure enough, it came up. Blue rope came up. And this was in the scripture where it said, and wheresoever he entered into the villages or into the cities or into the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and besought him that they might touch it, if it were but the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. So they touched the blue rope, the tzitzit, on his tallit, and this is the word eclipse right here going through it. So this represents the restoration of the temple, the restoration of the DNA, and the word eclipse is going right through it. You can see it here in the red, the letters E, C, L, I, P, S, E, and the E is sharing blue, which blue is the important color. If you'll watch that video, you'll see why. So they touched the blue rope, and it's sharing the E in eclipse. And then I tried putting in a few more terms. I tried putting in the word light, elect, ark, and Noah, and all those words came up. You can see the word light over here in the blue. It's at a skip of 1. The letters L, I, G, H, T. You can see elect right under that in the green with the letters E, L, E, C, T, and that would be over here in Mark 7. And then we had Noah's coming up in the green, and then ark is right here in the word market. Okay, and this was coming up in the book of Mark 6 and Mark 7. And right over here where you have the blue rope, where you have the word rope, it has the terms they crossed over. And in the scripture over here, it's talking about crossing over and coming into the land of Gennesaret. So I looked up the word Gennesaret. And you can see the scripture over here in Mark 6. So when you look up the word Gennesaret in the Greek, you see that it comes from a Hebrew word. And it means harp. And so I looked up the Hebrew word just to see it in the Hebrew. And you can see it means harp. So it comes from a Hebrew word for harp. And this word is used 3 times in the Greek, which comes from the Hebrew word for harp. But when you look up the word harp or harps, you see that it only comes up 3 times in the New Testament, and all of those are coming up in the book of Revelation. And as you can see, this has to do with rejoicing in heaven, especially the one in chapter 14. Okay, so as you can see, this table on the word eclipse seems to have to do with the restoration of the temple, the restoration of the DNA, and rejoicing in heaven. But I'm about out of time, so I'll have to continue with more in the next video. Thank you.